For more than 50 years, land-based nuclear missiles and long-range bombers have played a key role in America's strategy to deter other nations from using their nuclear weapons against us. But the age of the equipment is a problem, and human error is always a concern. Small mistakes, like a dropped socket, can mean the difference between routine maintenance and a major accident. We were not aware until we started researching this story how many close calls there have been involving nuclear weapons. Fires, plane crashes, fuel explosions, even a bomb that was accidentally dropped on U.S. soil. The seriousness of many of these incidents was not disclosed at the time, but based on witness accounts and declassified government documents, we have a much better understanding today of how close we have come to a nuclear disaster.
We came close on numerous occasions during the Cold War to having our own weapons detonate accidentally on American soil.
Eric Schlosser spent 6 years investigating nuclear weapons mishaps during the Cold War. His book, Command and Control, describes a number of hair-raising incidents, like a rocket fuel explosion in 1980 in Damascus, Arkansas, that forced the evacuation of people living near a Titan II missile complex.
Someone dropped a socket in the silo, and the socket fell about 70 feet, pierced the missile, caused a fuel leak, and then there was a huge explosion.
If that exploded, how come you say there was no detonation?
They put safety mechanisms in the warheads to make sure they only detonate over the target where they're supposed to, and that's a testament to the engineering skill of the warhead designers and to good luck.
Schlosser says that's not the only time we were lucky. A few days after John Kennedy's inauguration in 1961, an Air Force B-52 like this one had mechanical problems and accidentally dropped a nuclear bomb over Goldsboro, North Carolina.
When it hit the ground, the firing signal was sent, but one safety switch prevented a full-scale detonation of a powerful hydrogen bomb in North Carolina.
I'm kind of shocked because I didn't hear the story.
Yeah.
Ever, did I? Until you revealed it? Was that made public?
There was a real effort throughout the Cold War to deny that there was any possibility that a nuclear weapon could detonate by accident.
Today's Minuteman III missiles use rocket fuel that's more stable and less likely to explode. And they've upgraded some key components, too, like the guidance systems that direct the missiles toward their target.
The nuclear weapons themselves, the warhead, the bombs, are much safer than they were 30 years ago. There's no question about that. But the infrastructure, the equipment, what carries those weapons?
The Minuteman itself goes back
to the Nixon administration.
The Nixon administration.
Look at it this way. If you got a beautiful sports car from the 1960s, it would drive really fast and it would be fun to drive.
Right.
But a modern car is going to have so many more safety mechanisms that are so much more sophisticated. And the architecture, the command and control architecture, is complicated and aging.
How would you evaluate the risk of an accident happening? Human error kind of thing.
The probability is as close to zero as you can get.
Major General Jack Weinstein's first job as a young airman was manning one of those launch control centers. Today, he's in charge of all 450 land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles in the U.S. You have said that you sleep well at night.
That's a direct quote.
Some people would say you shouldn't be sleeping well at night. You should be constantly worried because you have a very complex system here, and there are a lot of things that could go wrong.
The people that designed this weapon system in the 1960s, even though we've made upgrades, are actually brilliant, and there's a lot of safety mechanisms built into the system.
But during our visit to the Underground Control Center with Colonel Carl Jones, we got a glimpse of what the Missile Corps is up against. Take this enormous outer door designed to protect the corridor leading to the capsule. They can't close it because of a broken part, so it's propped open with a crowbar and marked with a danger tag. We were told the door has been disabled like this for years.
Many things in the capsule, in the equipment building, aren't manufactured anymore. So we have to figure out a way to manufacture that piece and see if the new piece will work.
At a missile silo we visited, time and frigid weather had clearly taken their toll. The missile was being pulled from the silo for repairs because water had seeped in.
It's probably the worst case of loose nukes in U.S. military history.
Some nuclear weapons snafus have happened fairly recently. In 2007, 6 nuclear-tipped cruise missiles were loaded onto a B-52 by mistake, flown across the country, and left unguarded on the tarmac. No one noticed for 36 hours. That led then Defense Secretary Robert Gates to ask the Air Force Secretary and Chief of Staff to resign. In 2010, because of a technical glitch, a missile squadron at the base we visited in Wyoming stopped receiving electronic messages from the missiles it was charged with monitoring.
What happened was we lost status monitoring of 50 missiles.
50 missiles?
50. It was a squadron.
For an hour?
A little under an hour, but an hour.
What word would you use to describe that? Is it serious? Was it dangerous?
I don't view it as dangerous at all because of the safety of the weapon system. I would call it serious when you lose status monitoring for that period of time.
Being able to communicate with the missiles and with others on the base is essential to a missileer's job. So we were surprised to learn they were having trouble hearing what was being said on their phones. Can you repeat that? What about the phones?
They're awful.
Yeah, they're great.
What isn't great about them? Is it the hearing, or is it that you can't connect when you make a call?
It's
or
both. I mean, you can't hear the other person on the other end of the line. Sometimes you can't dial out, which makes it very difficult if you're trying to do your job.
Just to be clear, the president will not be calling them on the phone with his launch orders. They have other more secure systems for that. But still,
it is an analog system. And when you have an analog system, there are problems. We're looking at upgrading that in the next few years.
Years?
In the next few
Not
years.
Months.
No, years.
And they're using really, really, really old computers. I saw a floppy disk, and not a floppy disk that size. It was gigantic.
I'll tell you, those older systems provide us some, I will say, huge safety when it comes to some cyber issues that we currently have in the world.
Now explain that.
A few years ago, we did a complete analysis of our entire network. Cyber engineers found out that the system is extremely safe and extremely secure on the way it's developed.
Meaning that you're not up on the internet?
We're not up on the internet.
So did the cyber people recommend you keep it the way it is?
For right now, yes.
A terrorist attack is also a major concern. This tactical security team trains constantly to take back a missile silo from the bad guys if they ever get in. Once the team enters the compound and secures the site, they go down into the silo, fast roping and drawing their guns quicker than most of us can tie a shoelace. The land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, the ICBMs, that we saw are just one part of the nuclear triad that includes missiles on submarines and bombers. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that operating and upgrading all 3 legs of the triad is going to cost at least $355 billion over the next 10 years. Do we need all 3 legs of the triad?
I think that the one leg of the triad that may be the least useful are our missiles.
The land-based?
The land-based missiles are targets. The Russians know exactly where they are. It puts the states where they're based at risk, whereas with submarines, they're hidden. One of the things about a bomber is if the bomber takes off with nuclear weapons and you change your mind, you can have the bomber come back to the base, and you can't do that with a land-based missile.
The land-based leg of the triad. Do we need to have that?
I think it's extremely important to have an on-alert, 24/7 nuclear capability to protect our nation. I think we need to look at the problem set sometimes in the eyes of other nations. When other nations are upgrading their ICBM force, They're modernizing their ICBM force. I think it's extremely important that we provide the American public with that day-to-day deterrent value that the ICBM provides.
And that's the mission.
And that's the mission.
Hands on keys and switches.
We were watching missileers practicing their procedures in a simulator.
Mark.
Would you like the key turn?
Yes. When one of the instructors offered us a chance to do a practice launch. It was simple enough to turn the switches.
Turn.
Hold it. Hold it. Okay, release.
How many missiles did I actually launch? 1 or 10?
You launched 50.
I launched 50.
50.
I would say everybody here would remember their first alert. You ride your elevator down, you go through those first 2 massive blast doors, and you're looking at the same console you've been training on for so long, but this one is tethered directly to 10 nuclear weapons with status monitoring for an additional 40. And that weighs on you, absolutely weighs on you.
We left the base more aware of the pressures these young officers are under and hoping their superiors will get around to fixing those phones and broken doors. Recently, the Air Force announced it would spend $19 million this year to upgrade the launch control centers and silos, and it's asking for over $600 million next year to make further improvements.